So welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today to this special Spirituality Week in New York City. And I am so excited to share my work that I've been doing lately on Discover Your Personal Mythology. It's really something very exciting and dear to my heart. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to have this as kind of be open, but I do actually have some things I'm going to start with. But at any point, please, if you have a question or a comment, please just speak up. That's fine. And or send a chat. Chat's a little harder for me because as I'm presenting, then I have to go and read. So it's easier if you just speak up, if that's okay. All right. So I want to introduce myself briefly. My name is Maureen Calamia. I am a feng shui practitioner and earth energy healer based in St. James, New York. That's out on Long Island. So, for the last few years, I've been going through a major transformation process. It's not my first and certainly won't be my last. In addition to what everyone else has been going through with the pandemic, and having their own personal transformations. I've also had Pluto going through a very important point on my chart. For any of you astrology buffs out there, Pluto's been crossing over the vertical axis in my chart, which is called the IC and the MC. And those 2 points are related to home and family and career and kind of being out there. So this has been going on for a few years and it's still happening. It's not over until like January this coming year. And basically Pluto, the planet of transformation, has been triggering major change in these areas of my life and basically having me clear out a lot of past stuff, a lot of old beliefs about myself, about family beliefs, ancestors, all my foundations, and also asking me to move forward in a new direction. Excuse me. So I still do feng shui and earth energy healing work. It is a passion of mine, but I've moved very much into this other space that has always been a passion for me. And I never kind of put, I guess, an understanding around it that I can kind of grasp better now, but I'm still in the process of molding it, shall I say. It is a passion for our connection to nature, which has been with me for a long time, but also depth psychology, which I can stand back now and say has been with me ever since I was a child, because although didn't know who Carl Jung was as a child, I always thought in terms of metaphor and symbols in dreams and waking life. And that is a huge passion of mine. I call this looking at our personal mythology. So during this Pluto transit, I've likened the moment, this movement of Pluto, which takes forever, takes years to go past a point in a chart, because of its retrograde phase, which means it kind of goes this way and goes that way and this way and that way. I've likened it to a slow, long, distant rumble, like thunder that's way far away, but it is so deep that it shakes your house and everything in it. Now, when Pluto actually stopped, which is what a planet does before it goes retrograde, it's stationing, right? When that day, when Pluto stopped in the sky, right on my vertical axis, the town maintenance trucks with heavy earth moving equipment started digging up the road only in front of my house. Only in front of my house to get rid of all the potholes. They were literally ripping up the road and causing my whole house to shake. They were laying a brand new foundation. And this is the gift of looking at metaphor in our lives. So the topic of this workshop, Discover Your Personal Mythology, is the subject of a manuscript that I finished last year, as well as a brand new book that I just started writing last month after coming back from a long-awaited trip to my ancestral Scotland. And this name came to me, Discover. For me, Discover is providing this framework for you to, or for us, to explore, reflect, and discover our stories. And through this 1 hour we have together, stories may arise. Jot them down. I suggest having a pen and paper near you. Something may come up. If not, no worries. We're going to do a little prompting together and see where we go from there. Now, the word mythology has a lot of connotations. So mythology itself means the study of myth. Of course, myth is traditional stories explaining some natural or social phenomena. It is the realm of gods and goddesses and heroes, and even supernatural beings and events. But in these modern times, it's become synonymous with superstition, false beliefs, or ideas. So what is your personal mythology? I just want to share what we will not talk about today, really. And that is Greek, Roman, and even Norse mythology. And how, some people will talk about our personal mythology being how we unconsciously recreate patterns of a typical myth in our lives, such as Aphrodite, the goddess of love, which is usually connected with, say, Marilyn Monroe in her life, or Persephone, the goddess of the underworld. These are fascinating topics. I have done many workshops as a student, sitting in on them, but I am not a traditional mythology person. I don't have this catalog of all these different myths that I can refer to. And I believe most of us don't. Some of us here might be, and that's fabulous, but most of us don't. So it is definitely not my passion nor my wheelhouse, at least currently. But what we will discuss are stories that are accessible to all of us, even if you don't know traditional mythology. Because we have a gift of metaphor and symbols to help us reflect and inform us of these deeper messages in these stories. I'm referring to stories of numinous encounters or events that are often in nature. And as you read the little description here, like an oak tree that we might have gone to help us, well, maybe not even purposely helping us, but somehow help us deal with grief, or looking up at the night sky and feeling part of the oneness of nature. These are the stories and others that we want to probe into. Stories of something greater, mystical, and perhaps even a brush with grace. So why would I use this term mythology if it relates to the gods, which we're really not going to talk about, and it can have a real negative connotation? Well, right now it's the best word I can come up with. I could use the word story, but story is kind of has that negative connotation as well, that it's fictional. And stories can be kind of just that, kind of flat, two-dimensional objects with not much depth or meaning to them. So there's no benefit really to using that word story, although I will use it just, throughout this presentation to just kind of help me guide through this process. But just think about it. Mythology. I get goosebumps. Mythology raises these experiences up in significance, makes it larger than life, larger than us. It raises to the realm of the gods and goddesses. It demands to be reviewed, reflected upon, and digested. How do we dare ignore that kind of power? Mythology of our lives. They're rich with meaning and metaphor. At the same time, though, and this is just so beautiful, there's an air of aloofness, a subtlety like a cloud or steam. Mythology also has longevity. It unfolds over time if we give it the air to breathe. It grows in richness as we tell it to others. It captures our imagination as well as others. And it still retains that mystical quality, that mysteriousness, that it's never fully knowable. And that I find so exciting, that we can continue to explore these stories. And there's always something to uncover. So, wow, this one word is packed with magic, power, and adventure. It's larger than life, demands our attention. It's rich with metaphor, has longevity, unfolds over time, but is still mystical, mysterious, and magical. So at this point, you may already have something coming up going, yep, I know exactly what she's talking about. Maybe a couple of things. And there might be some of you going, I have no idea. I never had any of these. Well, don't worry. We're going to go through some process and a meditation together and see what arises. Just have fun with it. There's no destination. We're going to step into a portal I call a liminal space together, and we'll see where it takes us. But before we get there, there's 3 requirements for this work, and I might remember more, but right now, you must have an open imagination. Don't think of it as childlike or fantastical. It's the spark of genius, imagination. It's creative thought. So we just have to suspend rational thought. Number 2 is a sense of curiosity and wonder. Because without curiosity, we won't explore it deeper and go, oh, I wonder why that, and what about that, and that. That's curiosity that gets us propelled in that direction. Curious about why this particular event happened at that particular time. Synchronicity. I know everybody on here knows what that is. And lastly, the ability to reflect on metaphor and symbols. The earth speaks to us through images. Not just images, but sound, feeling, colors. All the senses. We will need to analyze these symbols in our mind, right? So we definitely need the mind to be there. However, at the same time, we need to be able to step back away from the mind and feel with the heart. So always to be, we say in feng shui, it's always the balance of yin and yang, the give and take, the action, to be active and receptive, to be with the head and the heart. It's part of being human and being whole. So what do I consider to be in this realm of personal mythology? I think you probably know already, but I believe that we've all experienced something odd, out of the ordinary, perhaps even extraordinary in our lives. Some of us, many times. Some of us might have just like one thing that just stands out, and that's perfect. And that's where we're going to start. Something mystical that was meant to capture your attention and your curiosity. These experiences, I feel, are meant to give us information, may lead us in a new direction or propel us down the path or help us even discover our life purpose. No less, but sometimes these experiences are simply to help us deal with some current trauma or grief or suffering that we have at that moment, to lift us up and awaken us to something bigger, more expansive than our short human lives, and to give us faith and hope. And I've heard many stories from all of these things. In my book that I finished last year, I interviewed 40 people, 40 plus people on numinous experiences. So unfortunately, what happens to many of us when we have these experiences? Well, Jean Shinoda Bolen, a Jungian analyst and author of so many books and just fabulous, amazing woman, says we sometimes stop at the wow factor. We pause for a moment and go, with wonder and curiosity. Sometimes there's a recognition, even briefly, that something very unusual just happened. And we go, how? But unfortunately for many of us, it stops there. And we go on with our lives as if it never happened. And even some of these people that are amazing spiritual people had experiences they shared that they go, you know what? I never really thought about that until now. It came up. So they even had these stories sometimes that really didn't see the light of day until then. It just popped up to be expressed. And sometimes we completely dismiss it like it never happened. We think we imagined it, or we just don't explore it again. So most of the experiences are very subtle. Very subtle. Some not. But most of them are very subtle. It's like whispers. But stories like in the Bible or in pop culture give us the idea that the mystical comes in these major swooping burning bushes or Superman, and that's not how these experiences typically happen. They are much more subtle and can be easily missed and dismissed. And in this subtle mysteriousness, they ask us to suspend skepticism and have faith and hope and trust. We question our experience as just a wild imagination. But I wonder, in these increasing times of urgency, for us to awaken and to raise our consciousness, that the health of the planet and humanity is getting to be at a dire place, that the earth isn't going to start speaking to us much more mythically and powerfully to startle and shake us up. So I want to share this really brief story of probably one of the most startling experiences I ever had. And I was in a pine wood forest and walking around, And at one point I saw this one pine tree just called out to me. So I walked to it and I went like this with my hands, and I laid my hands out just a couple of inches from the bark of the tree. And I just kind of felt the groove, and it's something that I do often, and some of you may be familiar with. And sometimes I get little images in my mind or thoughts, very subtle. This particular time, I literally got smacked right here and fell backwards. I didn't fall on the floor, but I lost my balance and almost fell. And what it was, I got the image of an eye right here. And it immediately knew this was the third eye being, wake up, wake up. And at the time, I was going through hosting a couple that does tree healing. And I was preparing to do that workshop. So at first I was just like, oh, well, maybe this is telling me, this tree's telling me this is work you've got to do. But I think it was bigger. Now, when I think about the story, which happened about 8 years ago, this story was really the earth saying, wake up. There's trouble here. And you've got to do something about it. So, I mean, I actually had my husband was with me, so he saw me fall backwards. It wasn't completely in my imagination. So it was like, Maureen, this happened. You're not crazy. I knew for sure. That was boom, immediate physical experience. Most of the time, it's not at all like that. As you, I'm excited to hear if any of you want to share in just a little bit. So remember, we're taking this information in from nature or our higher selves. I mean, it's all the same, right? Not just in our waking life, but our dreaming life as well, because the dream world is all speaking to us in images and metaphor. So these stories pop up when we need them the most. There's not one story, it's not like, oh, one story in our lives. There's an evolution of story. There's some more connected to others. Sometimes you're able to put a chronology. I've got a pretty interesting experience about that, of like how that symbol shifted throughout your life. You start uncovering and sharing these stories, and you may see, where did this symbol show up before in my life? What is the connection here? And why am I getting it now? So having a personal mythology helps us make sense and meaning in our lives, helps us understand where we are from a higher perspective, can point us in a new direction, give a message, serve as guideposts, makes life feel more magical. But these experiences can also open us up to our life purpose and what we need to do. And I think that is one of the really important things we have to know, especially now. I think people are starting to wake up to their soul purpose and what they need to do in this life if they're not currently doing it. So I am going to just go right now into a meditation with you. You get yourself comfortable. Before we do that, are there any questions?
Hi, thank you for all this explanation. My name is Padmaja. I've read Jean Shinoda Bolen's book, and I recently registered for her course, online course.
Which book did you read?
The Goddesses. I thought she wrote only one book. She wrote
The Goddesses. Oh, she's got, I think, like 10 or more.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I've got her book on Artemis and
Oh, not the individual goddesses, where she describes all the goddesses.
right.
And I also like who is that other woman? The women who run with the wolves.
Yes,
Who's
Clarissa
yeah,
Piccola
Clarissa Estes.
Estes.
Yeah, Clarissa. I read both. I'm originally from India, and we have a lot of mythologies and goddesses in our culture too. And I've been reading books around that where other authors are like re-narrating the story from a non-patriarchal stance. Because
Yes.
some of the goddesses, some of the female figures in the mythology were kind of having a patriarchal bent. So if they were alive, and what would they say? So I've been reading that. It's been very fascinating. And I'm also I launched a nonprofit to help women who have gone through sexual trauma, and my solution is going to incorporate cultural mythological figures, so women can derive different kind of support from these figures for their healing. And I want to make it culturally sensitive. So I'm really fascinated to be attending this program. Thank you.
Oh, yes. Yes. Thank you so much for joining. Yeah.
Welcome.
Okay. All right. So if you want to just get yourself comfortable in your chair, close your eyes and take a few deep breaths. Feel into your energy field, just a couple of inches away from your body. Feel that energy swirling around. There's lots of activity in there. Lots of electricity, impulses, thoughts and emotions. With each breath, just soften this energy field. Soften the hard edges, creating more coherence. Feel the light. Feel it hover around you. Now go into this field. Just kind of imagine that you're stepping into the energy field. Feel the smooth coherence and light vibrations around you. And hover in this space. You are weightless and buoyant, like a cloud or steam. Softly bobbing, gently floating. Is there a story within you that wants to be revealed? Just let it arise. If you need more guidance to find your story, just listen to these questions and see what happens. Did I have a deeply moving spiritual experience? Or a profound dream that I've carried with me all these years? Has anything magical happened to me? Something I could not explain. Have I had a crazy coincidence that changed something in my life? Have I had an experience where I felt something in my perception shift or my body or my heart. If something came up for you, know that this is gold. Any story could have arisen, but this one did now. It wants to be known and explored. All right, let's just take 2 more deep breaths in this space. Feel your body in the chair, your feet on the ground, and maybe pat your body, ground yourself, gently open your eyes. So this is just the beginning of the process. Whatever story came up for you, the story begs to be journaled. I personally find journaling to be extremely rewarding, and perhaps you as well. Even if you've contemplated the story before and you have a sense of what the meaning was, I would suggest that if it came up for you again today, there might be something else that needs to be uncovered. And we're not going to be able to do that in the realm of this workshop, but it's for you to take to write and explore. I was writing my book, and a story about my childhood came up. I went, oh yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. So I started writing about it. And as I started writing about it, literally, I went, oh, wow, there's more here. There's more here. And then I started thinking about these connections to other points in my life. And I started seeing this like story, this myth of my initiation into womanhood, starting from here and moving through my life. And I am sure there's more to uncover with that story. As I said, there's that aloofness, that kind of knowing that you're not getting the whole thing, you're getting close. So I just want to suggest writing your story down. Even if you have spent lots of time with it, even if you've written it down before, do it again. Do it now from a new spot, because you are never where you are right now. What you know right now, your energy right now, everything is different. So there will be something else you can uncover. Stories have the power to transform us and others. And as Jean Shinoda Bolen writes in her book called Trees, it's about trees. Of course, we all love trees. And she asks, are you a tree person? Yes, of course. But she wrote in there that her hope is that people start sharing their stories, these types of stories, because when we do, we awaken these stories in other people. It is powerful beyond words. Others will go, oh, something like that happened to me, or maybe not exactly in that way, but something will spark other people. And I think everybody that's here, that came here today, or watching the replay, there's a spark, hopefully, I'm hoping, there's a spark of what I'm saying here that will ignite something in you. When we share our stories, We light that light in others. We ignite that passion to explore more, that sense of adventure. So some questions you can use in reflection are, things like, when did this happen to me? What was happening at that time in my life? Think about the environment. Like, what was going on? Any major themes going on? That story of womanhood initiation was nested in the recent passing of my father. I was 11 years old. This experience happened 2 months later. When you're a kid, you're not seeing that. Like, oh, this and then this, you're not thinking of that. But you look back at it now and you go, oh, I was right in the throes of what I was going through. Is there anything here that reminds me of something else that I'm currently going through? That's another question to think about. Anything else, anything here that reminds me of something I'm currently going through? Any kind of metaphor between the two? This is ripe for dreams, but, I've had a few dreams lately of someone trying to shoot me. Yes, I have looked at it from a larger collective and realized gun violence is definitely popping into our dreams, into our subconscious. But on another personal level, it's a sense of death and rebirth and transformation. I kind of see that. So, moving to a new house, a house in Jungian analysis represents consciousness. So when you move to a new house, there's so much about that to explore. Okay. How do I relate to the metaphor or symbol, the main metaphor or symbol in this experience? Does it show up in any other experience, waking or dreaming? For instance, I had a dream that I was helping save deer. And this was way before I was in marketing. I was in New York City in marketing. I was saving deer, and then I was in the mayor's office, and there was an angel there, which was weird because I never really had a thing about angels, even though I'm Catholic, but I never really bought into the whole angel thing. So there was an angel sitting there, and we're talking about violence in the city. This is back in 2004. Violence in the city because there's no trees. We have to plant trees. So I woke up and went, I don't know, but it happened to be the timing of this. Again, it's like, when did this happen? The timing of this was the very day I was laid off from my 10-year position in marketing at this company. They've been going through layoffs for a few years, and inevitably I was laid off. But months before this happened, I was so I wanted to quit so bad. But something in me just said, stick it out, stick it out. Thank God I did, because I got severance. But I was feeling just drained, just totally unfulfilled. And when I finally got laid off, I was like, wow, okay, now I can do what I want to do. But what do I do? So this was going on in my mind. And I had this dream. So this dream I knew was significant. I had a feeling it had something to do with nature because that was the theme. And I knew it was sacred because of the timing and because that angel was sitting there just in the corner. No one else saw her but me. And so that deer dream has morphed and changed over my lifetime. It has shown up. The symbolism of deer has become to me a symbol of my direction for my work. So I've had real life experiences with a deer jumping on me twice, the same deer. And this was not, it was at yoga class. It was not deer yoga. But I belong to a nature center, and we were outside doing yoga, and there is a resident deer. She's sweet, Charlotte. She walks around the property, and she comes up and licks us and she likes to lick our mat, our leg, whatever. She never jumped on anybody, but she jumped on me. And then 6 months later, she jumped on me again. And it was like, whoa. Everyone was just shocked, and she hasn't done it since. But I knew there was a significance there, and it had to do with my book. And she was pregnant. It was the gestation period. She had just gotten pregnant in November. She gave birth in May. And this was the gestation of my book. It was just phenomenal. So this, I guess, I'm sorry to go into so much deep detail, but this dream image of deer has shown up in physical life, and it's shown up in dreams of other people that know me. And they told me I was birthing deers. And it's just crazy. So think about it in a larger context. And oh, did I mention I was born in Deer Park? Oh, and yes, any of you out there who follow Buddhism know that Buddha first taught in Deer Park, the Deer Park. So this deer image is just a really important one for me. When you have this experience, what did this image want to communicate to me? That's another question. Is there something it wanted me to know? Is there something that it wants me to follow up on, to share? And I have another story, but I'm going to hold off on that unless we have extra time. You can ask for help with the meaning of an image. If you're really stuck with, like, I really don't know what this image is. It's red lollipop. I don't know. Think about what it means for you. But if you're stuck, go into a meditative state. Ask for help. Or just ask for help with the meaning, and just go about your life with, open eyes and see what happens. And here's another good one. Sometimes we may downplay ourselves. Here we are talking about mythology, which is larger than life. And who am I? I'm just me, Maureen. If someone else told you about this story, what would you think? What would you think it was about?